Hello everyone, Charles Watts here. Welcome back to Inside Arsenal. It is Monday, Bank Holiday Monday over here in the UK. I hope you're having a good one wherever you are watching or listening to this around the world. The start, obviously, of a huge week, a massive week, just a small little matter of Arsenal versus PSG or PSG versus Arsenal. The Champions League semi-final, second leg, kicking off on Wednesday night. Just a couple more days to wait. So all preparations, all focus now turns to that. Yes, it was a horribly disappointing weekend in the Premier League with that defeat against Bournemouth, but that's done now. Nothing we can do about that. Still got a massive opportunity ahead of us on Wednesday night. Fingers crossed the players, Mikel Arteta, the coaching staff, can all put together a plan, put it into action, and Arsenal can book themselves a spot in the Champions League final for only the second time in Arsenal's history. So we're going to talk about that a little bit later on in the show. I'm going to be heading to London Colney tomorrow for open training before the team flies out. So we should get a bit of an insight into who potentially is going to be available. Will Jurrien Timber be there? Will Kai Havertz be training? No, so we'll see what happens from that. The press conference is then a little bit later on in the evening in Paris. I'm not heading over there for this one. So I'll be at open training, but I won't be at the press conference on Tuesday night. So yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit later on the show. Look at some of the decisions facing Arteta, the likely sort of team that we'll see in Paris. But we're going to start on William Saliba and Real Madrid. We've been seeing this sort of begin to bubble away for the last couple of months. You know, it was always inevitable this sort of thing was going to start happening. And it's really sort of kicked up a gear in the last couple of days. I had a big report from France. Now, I'm sure you've seen it. It's all over the place. And L'Équipe have done a big report on it saying that Real Madrid and Saliba's camp have been in talks for the last few weeks about a potential move this summer. Basically, Real Madrid exploring with Saliba's camp the possibility of whether it's something that would be doable this summer. Good luck with that, because I don't think it will be. And L'Équipe reporting that from Saliba's side of things, that Real Madrid are the only club that he would leave Arsenal for. Now, I say it's inevitable. You know, it's just always felt like this sort of thing was going to happen, where we're going to have to deal with it at some point. And it feels like this is the summer that we're going to have to start really dealing with it. We've seen what the Madrid press are doing at the moment with the whole Saliba thing. And now it's sort of, now L'Équipe over in France have done a big piece on it as well. Like I said, when I said good luck with that, I don't see a way that Arsenal sell Saliba this summer. Saliba's not going to force his way out of Arsenal. And even that report in L'Équipe says that, you know, Saliba's happy at Arsenal. He's not going to force his way out and kick up a fuss or anything like that. So I don't see a way, unless Real Madrid come knocking with a ridiculous offer this summer, I don't see a way that this sort of progresses. But it's just the kind of start. That's the thing. And I think that's why this summer, that trying to get Saliba down to a new contract this summer is going to be absolutely crucial for Arsenal. And I think a lot of it going to play down on how he's feeling about the situation, how confident he is he can go on and win trophies at the club. Obviously, the end of this season, if Arsenal go out on Wednesday night, is not going to help with that, because it's been a really disappointing season in the league. Domestically, been a pretty disappointing season all round. You know, cup competitions weren't good enough, and league form just hasn't been at the level required. So, will that sort of, I don't know if the word disillusion is the wrong sort of word to describe it. Hopefully not, but we just know how Real Madrid works. We know how Florentino Perez works, and the way they go about getting their transfer deals done. And, you know, Real Madrid got a close-up view in the two legs against Arsenal of just how good Saliba can be. I thought he was exceptional at the Bernabeu, even with that one mistake, which led to Vinny Jr.'s equaliser. So that's what's coming out from France at the moment. And, yeah, you'll see it all over the place about the talks. But I'm not, my sort of personal view on it right now, I'm not overly worried about it, because, like I said, I don't see a way Arsenal sell. I think if Arsenal are going to sell Saliba, it would be next summer, which will be for less money, which will be a shame. But I don't see a way that they would sell this summer, whatever happens, even if he doesn't sign a new contract. I just think they'll give it another year and see how it pans out, and then take a decision a little bit later on down the line, barring a ridiculous transfer fee. I'd love to get your thoughts on this, though, how you kind of feel about the situation, what you would do in the summer if Real Madrid do come knocking with a bid, I don't know, over 100 million, you know, 110 million, 105 million, 120 million, something that sort of range. Is that something that you would consider at this point for Saliba, or would you be absolute flat out no, sends out the wrong signal, best centre-back, young centre-back in the world, why would we even consider selling? Let me know your thoughts on the whole situation in the comments below. Just moving on to the sort of the PSG game, Martin Odegaard. I know he's not everyone's cup of tea at the moment, but I'm not going to get into that again. But he did get a bit of a knock in the game on towards the end of the Bournemouth game at the weekend. But he is okay, according to from the horse's mouth himself. He said he's okay. He spoke to some of the media after the game in the mix zone. And when he was asked about the injury, he said, "I think it's okay. It was just a hit, so it's a bit sore, but it's fine." Talking about the sort of result against Bournemouth and how that has sort of affected morale and confidence going into the PSG game. He said, obviously, we wanted to get a win, get a good performance and get that momentum back before a big game. But at the same time, you have to use all the disappointment, all the anger and frustration you feel and create energy and get ready for Wednesday. So we have to use that now. And as I said, just be strong together and be ready for a massive game. We know what we play for, and we're going to be ready for that. For me personally as well, I want to affect the game as much as possible and be decisive. I think that goes for all the players, to be fair. We've shown that now in many games this season already in the Champions League that we're ready. And as I said, we're going to be ready for Wednesday. So like Arteta, he's there using that sort of use of disappointment, anger and frustration. It's kind of the same words that Arteta used. I think he used rage in there, didn't he, Arteta? And I suppose that's what you've got to do on the back of a performance like Bournemouth, certainly the second half against Bournemouth and the result against Bournemouth. What can you say at that point after that? It didn't go as planned. Arteta sent out a very strong team with the idea of winning the game, with getting momentum ahead of PSV. It went completely the opposite way. So what can you say at that point? It's just a case we've got to use this disappointment now as a way to sort of fuel the fire ahead of the game against PSG. I have no doubt that we're going to see a very different Arsenal team on Wednesday. If they can't turn up for this game, if they can't get themselves up for it, the result might not go their way. They're playing against a very good team away from home. The damage could well have been done at the Emirates, and I think the most likely scenario is that is probably going to be the case. But there is every chance that Arsenal can still go there and pull out a wonderful result at PSG and can go out there and play very, very well. We've seen them play well away from home in the Champions League already this season. They can do that. And I don't think what happened against Bournemouth is going to have too much of an impact on it. I think maybe in the last 20, 30 minutes, it might because of fitness and fatigue and all that sort of stuff. But I think in terms of actual performance, certainly for the first hour when everyone's feeling good and strong, I'm not too concerned that we're going to see a post-Bournemouth hangover against PSG. It's just about going out there and playing at your very best. You can't play like they played in the second half against Bournemouth. If you do that, if you switch off, if you're almost unprofessional at times in the way you're sort of dealing with defensive situations, you're going to get punished against a team like PSG. You cannot afford to do that. But I don't think they will. I think they're going to be switched on. They have to be switched on. Because if not, PSG are going to run riot over them. So fingers crossed they can perform and put in a really, really decent performance over there. Just on the battle for the top 5, it's frustrating not me having to talk about this. Really, honestly, should have been wrapped up so long ago. Some interesting results yesterday. Chelsea obviously going and winning at Liverpool. Chelsea had a nice touch yesterday playing that game against Liverpool at the end of that week of big, long celebrations for Liverpool. Arne Slot changing, rotating things a lot for that game. Chelsea took full advantage, getting the win 3-1. I think we'll see a very different Liverpool team when Arsenal go up there next weekend, when it's going to be a real sort of party at Anfield. I think, did I get the trophy after the game against Arsenal next week? I presume they probably do. So, yeah, Chelsea have moved to within 4 points of Arsenal now. Newcastle dropped points, so they drew at Brighton yesterday 1-1, which basically means if Arsenal beat Newcastle when they play, Newcastle can't finish above them. No matter what happens in the other 2 games, if Arsenal now beat Newcastle, that means that they're done and dusted, because Arsenal will be on 70 points, whatever happens against Liverpool, and Newcastle won't be able to reach that, because the most they'd be able to reach is 69 if they win their 2 games. So that would be them out of the equation. Whether Arsenal can beat Newcastle, they've certainly struggled at doing that in the past recently. But that is now the simple maths equation of all that. Chelsea have given themselves a good opportunity, obviously, but they do play Nottingham Forest, obviously, on the final day. So one of those 2 teams, if not both of those teams, will drop points on that day. So that's going to have a little bit of an impact on the table. And obviously Arsenal got Southampton on the final day, which, it doesn't matter how bad Arsenal are playing. If they can't go there and win on the final day, then, they are in real trouble. So it has opened things up a little bit. Certainly that Newcastle game and that draw there has Arsenal know what they've got to do now, beat Newcastle. And that's one team that certainly can't finish above them anymore. Right, going back to PSG, Matt Harvey has got in touch here. Thank you very much, Matt. And says, does anyone else feel that PSG are bluffing on Dembele and Arsenal are doing the same with Timber? I feel they will both play. Yeah, I agree, Matt. I think both are going to play. I'll be surprised if they don't. Like I said, I'm at open training tomorrow, so we'll get a good look to see if Jurien Timber is involved in that training session. I think he probably will be. I'd be very surprised if he's not. You just sort of try and patch him up if there is any sort of doubt there. I think this is just one game that is like, okay, try and play through the pain for this one. I think Ben White is so far away from being at his peak at the moment and being at his best that you just get Timber involved in this game. I think Dembele, the latest reports from France anyway on Dembele is that he should be returning to training today. I think that was RMC who reported that. And to see how it goes ahead of the game against Arsenal, and providing he comes through it fine, then he will be starting. I'd be shocked if Dembele doesn't start that game. It certainly seems like it's been a bit of a sort of a bit of a game from PSG on his fitness. But yeah, the latest reports are he will be back involved. So I'm sort of looking ahead at what Arsenal are going to do for the game. I think the team basically picks itself. Obviously, Timber's the one sort of doubt there. If he's not fit, then Ben White just comes in at right back. But I think this is a team. Obviously, Thomas Partey is back from suspension for this game, so he'll go back to the 6. I think we'll then see Odegaard and Rice ahead of him. Marino goes back to playing as a sort of focal point, false 9. Martinelli and Saka on either side, so you'll have Trossard on the bench. I'd be very surprised if this isn't the team. And then you look at that area and like, how are Arsenal going to hurt PSG? How do they get themselves back into the game? First of all, I just think the first half hour is absolutely essential. It's going to be so important because PSG are going to fly out the blocks. They always do, PSG. They're very, very quick starters. We saw that at the Emirates, obviously. But at home especially, they play with such intensity. The crowd is so whipped up into a frenzy that those first half hour, those minutes are going to be very, very uncomfortable for Arsenal. It's a case of just staying in the game, doing your job, sort of getting rid of all the noise, just focus on keeping PSG out, play your way into the game. I think that is going to be the most important part of the night for Arsenal. Is that opening half an hour? Can you make sure you do not play yourself out the tie in that game? Because I think the longer it goes on, things are going to start getting nervous. You know, PSG haven't got the best of records of sort of getting through in these big games in the Champions League as well, and that might play on their minds. The longer it stays tight and, you know, Arsenal aren't out of it, then I think you can play your way into the game then and start taking a few more chances. But that first half hour, they've just got to stay tight, sort of see out the storm that I think they're going to have to face. I think that's such an essential part of the game. I think Marino is going to be really, really important for that because Arsenal, I think, are going to have to go direct at times, or more direct than we're used to seeing them. Hit Marino, get him to hold the ball up with his back to goal, bring others into play, let runners get beyond him and slip them in. So I think he's going to be really important. And when you look at where Arsenal got a lot of joy against PSG, or some joy against PSG, it was when you had those driving runners from midfield. You look back at the 2 chances Arsenal really opened PSG up with. The Martinelli one in the first half, the Trossard one in the second half. Martinelli's one came from Miles Lewis-Skelly driving in field. PSG couldn't stop him. Then he slipped a lovely pass through to Martinelli. The other, for the Trossard, it was Declan Rice, wasn't it? Driving out of the number 6 position, getting away from his runners. PSG couldn't keep up with him, and then he slipped it into Trossard, who went through. So that's the area where I think Arsenal are going to have to really try and exploit against PSG. You know, whether that's Lewis-Skelly again coming in, inverting and getting into that central areas. Declan Rice is going to be given a lot more freedom to roam now that he's not going to be playing in the number 6 role, and you think that's going to be absolutely key. And then it's just all about being clinical. Arsenal weren't clinical in the first leg. They had 2 big chances to score. They didn't take either of them. Can't afford for that to happen this time. If Arsenal are going to get back into this game, they've got to take their chances, plain and simple. And I think set pieces as well are going to be important. We know PSG have a weakness there. Arsenal scored a set piece against them. It was obviously ruled out following the VAR check, but they did score against them. Can they take advantage as well? So get your set piece deliveries right. That's the key areas. And I'd like to get your thoughts on it all in terms of where you see a way back into this game for Arsenal. Who's going to be the most important players? How would you set things up? Let me know in the comments below. Right, I'm going to go on to a few of your comments, actually. First, before I get that, because I'm going to open training tomorrow, I'm probably not going to do a show at the usual time. It's going to be a little bit later. There's no point doing one. I'm going to have to, as soon as I drop my kids off at school, basically, I'm going to have to go straight to the training ground. Open training is due to start at 11. It tends to be about half an hour later than that by the time they actually come out. So I'll probably do some sort of video from the training ground afterwards. So I don't, instead of being live on here about 11 o'clock, it's probably going to be closer to, I don't know, maybe 12:30, something like that. So just keep your eyes peeled for that. And if it is a little bit later, that is the reason why. So Jasper has got in touch and says, watch the Sesko goal this weekend. Wow, all these strikers who are linked makes me so excited. We're in terrible league form, but it was a situation we all predicted in January. Amidst all these things, we are still second in the table. It's amazing. If we had any other manager, I'm sure our injury crisis and lack of signings would definitely be very down in the table. Let's have a huge transfer window. I'm excited for any striker we sign. Yes, I did see the Sesko goal against Bayern Munich. Very, very good. Indeed. So I always flip-flop between the pair of them. It's like, who would I prefer, Gyökeres or Sesko? And then I see one of them do something good at a weekend. I'm like, I want him. And then I see the other one do something good the following weekend. I'm like, no, I want him. So, but I'm kind of in that situation of whoever it is, if it is one of those two, whoever it is who Arsenal sign, I'd be quite happy with. I have to say, I still think I'm just about leaning a little bit more towards Gyökeres, but again, either one of those two, I'd be very, very happy with. Thank you very much there. Jasper Farron's got in touch and says it was a difficult season and it hasn't ended yet. We still have the Paris game in hand, and I do believe we can go through to the final. However, that Bournemouth game was an absolute mistake from Mikel. Showed the problem we're suffering all season: lack of rotations and lethal attackers. The players seem to have their mind in Paris already with the league gone to Liverpool, so they were not quite motivated as they used to be. We all know we have to compete for Champions League, and difficult fixtures are ahead. Many fans would have at least accepted a drop in points if there were some rotations against Bournemouth. Putting in a full squad, that is also acceptable as we need more points, but a defeat was definitely not on the cards to every fan, especially at home. 2 lost streaks at home with the same players is some of the worst decisions and results I've seen from Mikel with important games coming up. Hopefully the players get to grips and perform at their best in Paris. Yeah, as I said yesterday, there's sort of, I can understand in a way him going that strong because of what he wanted to achieve, but to go that strong and then not get the result, it was just basically a disaster for Arsenal and Arteta at the weekend. There's no getting away from that. Bobby says, hi, Charles. Looking ahead to Wednesday, I think there's reasons to be optimistic. Partey is back, which will help us break the lines. That allows Rice to play at left day and put Marino up top, so we have a physical presence up there. As good as their midfield is on the ball, they really struggled when we ran at them. Yes, I agree. We created 2 excellent chances by doing that in the first leg. In the first leg, we were well below the levels for long periods that we should be able to play at, but PSG were very good throughout, so there's much more room for improvement in our game than there is in theirs. It will come down to fine margins and who takes their chances. Hopefully we can. Come on, you Gunners. Thank you very much for that, Bobby. We've got here one from Andres now, who says, I think Arteta gave Luis Enrique our entire game plan for the first leg in that game versus Ipswich, and we paid for it. So he wasn't willing to show the patterns in attack that would have been created with Marino at 9 this time around. I think it was sensible to play all of the starters together, but in a different system. Should still have been good enough to win. No excuse. Not bothered at all. We go again on Wednesday. I'm sure Marino's aerial threat will be key, at least in beating the press. It will be a completely different game. I hope you're right, Andres. Absolutely. We need it to be a completely different game. And that's it from me today, everyone. Thank you for watching as usual and for listening, obviously, in podcast form. You can get the links to the podcast down below if you want to get this show delivered to your podcast platform every single day. Like I said, I'll be back tomorrow, probably slightly later than usual from the training ground, where hopefully we'll get the very latest Arsenal team news. Until then, have a great day, everyone. Speak to you soon. Bye-bye.